All right. I'm going to harass you a little bit. So you went and got more chickens, is what you're telling me.
Just, I don't want to talk about it, George.
All right. So, okay. So look, I know we're going to talk a little bit about the ever-loving, fun story of taxes, but
Yeah.
I have to tell you a little bit of story that kind of leads up to the tax explanation.
Okay.
All right. So I can't use their names. I'm walking through a house that's an obvious flip house. Okay. So this is one of those ones where everything's painted gray. It's got black and white countertops for the granite. It's got Home Depot special cabinets. It's got all those things. All right.
Yep.
So it's a low end flip. Okay. Not that it was done badly, just it was done cheap. Okay. But they're selling the house for about $175,000 more. Okay. So now you get into the question of, is the house going to pray? So they purchased it. I'm going to make up numbers. They purchased it for 150,000. They're selling it for 3.25. Okay.
Yep.
So here you start looking around and you go, all right, well, wait a minute. Where am I going to see $175,000 of value? So for the appraisal question, well, the buyers I was working with, they weren't upset about it. They were looking at what they could handle. They were looking at what they could afford. And they were saying, all right, this is what we're going to do. I said, all right. Someone looks at me and he says, hey, I was on Zillow. Okay. I'm not picking on Zillow. Okay. He says, I was on Zillow. He goes, George, he says, so this is what our payment's going to be. And he's going through on the app. This is what it's going to be. This is what's going to be. And I said, well, that's not what your payment's going to be. He goes, well, that's what it says there. And he shows me his screen, right? So, of course, it has a 20% adjustment or assumption into it and all that.
Yep.
But it also had the tax assessment in it or assumption in it.
Yeah. Estimate.
So you've looked into the taxes and how they're calculated on those various websites like Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, all of that, right? So you've looked into that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's what's funny, too. So they have two tax figures on all of these websites when they list them. They have what they estimate the taxes at, and that's what goes into their monthly payment calculation. And then they also have what they're pulling from town records when they can, which is also lagging information. So sometimes somebody will, say, hey, this, I think the payment's going to be this. And they'll be off by a couple $100 sometimes. And it's because the calculation on the website is based on a county level wide tax data estimate. Like, let's say New Haven County was 2.13% of the sales price. They just use that. They say that they're going to estimate that as the taxes.
All right. So let's take something in New Haven County. Okay. We'll just take Ansonia. It's the first one that comes up. And I'm going to just start. All right. So I'm just picking a property here. All right. So I have no knowledge about this property. I don't know anything about it. All right. But this is what's in the tax data. Okay. So this house, I don't know if it's for sale or not. Forget about that for a second here. But here's what you're talking about. Right. So this is all of the tax assessment data.
Yep.
So you have the land, you have the value. So the total assessment here for this particular property, they're assessing this house as of this year, $270,000. Okay. So if the house sold for $270,000, that would be one thing. But that assessed value, that's not the sold value of the home.
Yeah, that's 70%.
So you're saying that right there, which is the assessed value, which is, like you said, so the town is using the assessment for the tax purposes, which is 70% of the town's appraised value.
Yep.
Typically, the appraised value in the town's eyes, is about 70% of market anticipated value or actual sold value. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's usually around there, yeah. And that confuses people even more when they can see assessed value and they're going, whoa, wait a second.
So the other thing you have to be aware of, though, okay, so let me just change something here. Let's pull in a different thing because this is something that came out this year. Okay, well, it comes out every year, but can't pull it into the screen grab here. So each year, the towns do assessments on properties. What is it, every 5 or 7 years? I can't remember.
Yeah,
it usually varies. I think it's 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Connecticut this year did a sweeping change. Right. So I have, let's see.
Money, George.
The towns are looking around and saying, geez, with the run up in home values over the last 3 years, with all the changes that we've seen, we're doing a reassessment. So as realtors, we receive tax news updates and going through, and you and I were talking about this the other day. So wait a minute, back to this couple though. So they're looking at the taxes on this house. And the issue is that if it sells for, to call it that 3.25 price, right? So 70% of that being what, 260 something thousand dollars, and 70% of that being what, 170 something thousand dollars. But the taxes at the time that it was sold were based upon $150,000 sale, and the property was assessed for so much less. They're looking at almost a 3-time multiplier on the taxes. So from what was a $2,000 bill to nearly a $5,000 or $6,000 bill.
Yeah, and we qualify them on current taxes. So if we just checked, we just checked both of our own houses before we hopped on because we wanted to see.
So for example,
screwed.
Where I live, they did an adjustment on us 2 years ago. Okay, so we were not accounted for in this year, but you were. I looked at your town. You guys were.
Yeah.
You guys went up a couple of points.
But it hasn't hit me yet. So our taxes,
the grand list.
The two bills that we have are currently July 2023. So this, new assessment was done probably around that time, so they didn't have time to do that
Yours was
yet.
done, actually, you guys were done July 4th.
Yeah, so I doubt, though, that they updated the tax bills.
Not this year.
So I have a July tax bill, which we already paid, and then we're going to have our January 2024 tax bill, and then July 2024 is when it's going to hit us. But if I went to get a mortgage today, even though we know that bill is going to go up, we have to go work off of the current taxes. So that's something that we can tell people, hey, be ready for this, but it's not something I can really factor in.
We'll take, for example,
predict.
So hang on, I'm going to bring up your town. Let's see here. So you live
Cheshire, yep.
Yeah, so that's your new mill rate, right?
And what's our current? Does that have our current?
I was just going to say, what's your current? I can look it up.
Let me see. I'm going to check.
So the point is, though, as we go through and we take a look at all of these different, the yellow highlights at the time of what was coming in, which ones are done. But you see here, all of these 2023 updates. Now, some towns, like Middletown, did not do a 2023 update, but you have all these towns that did. And for a lot of people, let's see, let me go down.
And these mill rate updates are probably going to be less hurtful than an update of the actual when they reappraise properties in the town, right? That's when people are going to go, oof, that hurts.
So when the actual change occurs may not be until the 2024 grand list. Okay, so that would be the July 2024. So the October grand list will come out this year. That's coming out in a few weeks. And that'll be what updates for the upcoming year of property taxes. That new tax bill, if you're going to see an adjustment, you're going to see a tax adjustment on the 2024 bill for July, right?
Yep.
Okay. So if somebody bought a house a year ago, they may have already had their assessment adjustment.
Yeah.
That's very possible. Doesn't mean that it happened again this year, but it's highly likely based upon that list. It's highly likely that it did. So now let's shift gears for a second here. Okay. And you go back to like a Zillow or a Realtor, and everybody goes through it. They're using that favorite little app right there, and they're scrolling through it. It says, well, I can afford this house for $2,200 a month. Yeah. Well, the assumption being that A, you put 20% down, B, that you have a low interest rate, and C, that taxes are what they are today. And that's not going to be the case in a year. Everybody's taxes are going to go up. What is it? Death and taxes?
Death and taxes, the two things you can rely on. And certainly now, I mean, we had in 2020 and 2021 probably a cumulative 20% increase, maybe 24% increase in property value, right?
I think it was it was like 19 point something was the median.
Yeah. So then, you probably had another 10 last year.
Last year we were below 10. This year we actually took a higher run.
So that's over the course, though, of 4 years, you've had
30+%.
30, 40%, depending on your property. And then if you did upgrades and improvements, which a lot of people were doing, remember there was that big boom you couldn't get stuff at Home Depot or Lowe's because, you couldn't get a contractor to come to your house. So
Okay, so
now,
that's the other side of the assessment. So you have the town's assessments that you have to account for. So if you bought your home in 2023, you are, and whatever the taxes were at the time of purchase, you should anticipate a tax change on your 2024 tax bill.
yeah.
You're better off assuming that that's the case. And again, if you want to figure out the math on how that works, hang on.
It's your 70s.
Let's see here. Okay, so if we assume that you bought a house for, say, $350,000, right? That's what you paid for. Well, the town, you can assume that the town will see that as an appraised value of $245,000, which would mean that their assessed value is going to be about $171,000. Okay, so that's the town's view of what the property value is as an assessed value for tax purposes. That $171,000 then is multiplied by the mill rate. So it's actually the number of per thousands. So you actually only have 171. And then what's your mill rate? 35?
35.9. 35.
So you'd have 6,000 in taxes.
Yeah.
So if you were assessed in the prior year, let's say you were assessed at 150,000, you just went up 20. So you're going up what, $600 a year. So now you're up another $50 a month. Okay. Yeah. Which on one level is not a big deal, but if you're buying a $1 million house, if you're buying a $500,000 house and you're in a town where they had a massive jump, because you have towns that didn't do assessments for 5, 7, and 10 years because they were trying to delay things because it just wasn't enough economic improvement.
Yeah.
You have towns, though, that don't have real industry. They rely heavily on property taxes. Those are going to be major adjustments. I mean,
oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Big time adjustments. And you know what? I feel like we're always a little doomy gloomy sometimes, but it's really just, be ready for, because I have people who they close and they say, all right, this is my mortgage payment forever. Right. And I have to say, this is your principal and interest payment forever. But mortgage is made up of PITI, principals and interest, taxes and insurance. And I think that we probably spoke about insurance before and how that's going up, and taxes are as well. So it's just, you got to be aware that bill can change, and it's normal.
And what's unfortunate, and we're going to get to the other side of the tax adjustment that can hit. And again, it always does sound a little bit doomy and gloomy, but at the end of the day, it comes down to you have to be aware when you're buying. You are buying a property. It's not just your mortgage.
Yeah.
People wrap it into that monthly spend.
Yep.
Okay. But like you said, it's the PITI. It's the principal, interest, tax, insurance. The issue with the taxes and insurance is that those are forever going up. Your mortgage with the principal and interest will over time adjust downward.
Yep.
And if you put more money against that, you're putting money against the principal of the loan, which is going to lower how much interest gets assigned, but the taxes and insurance are going to still go up. So my house, when we bought this house 23, almost 24 years ago now, our taxes were like this. Our taxes were like this. But part of it's because along the way, about halfway through, we said, we're going to blow the house apart.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. So if you're doing work on your house, like we did here, and when we did the work here, okay, our town decided to do a reassessment of our house upon completion when it had the certificate of occupancy issued. Because we said we weren't moving. We decided the market was just too crazy at the time. We said, we're not moving. It'll cost us less money if we just stay put money into our house. And so we ended up putting square footage on and doing all this stuff. Well, town had to issue a certificate of occupancy for us to move back in the house because we literally moved out of it for about 6 months. There were 2 months we physically were not living in the house.
And do they always, when you have to get a new certificate of occupancy, do they always like reassess and update the town records at that point?
Yep. So the town is going to be, because if you're doing that, that means that you did things correctly. That means you pulled permits. So that means you have your electrical, your plumbing, your carpentry, framing, insulation, all those things have been done. So your general 3 permits. But if it's a new build, it's a totally different conversation. So let's take existing resale houses. So Bill decides, hey, you know what, George, I'm going to redo my kitchen. Okay.
Sounds familiar.
So the town has all that on record that you applied those permits, but you had to attach a value to the permit. That's how you got your permit fee. So if you said, hey, I think I'm going to do $50,000 worth of work on my house, and the town permit fee is $20 per thousand, so I got $1,000 permit fee. Well, that's how the town now knows on record that $50,000 estimate that you had It's part of what they look at. Now, are they calculating that in automatically? Say, well, the house is now worth $50,000 more. No, but you will see an adjustment in your assessment relative to that, and then relative to the town sale value.
I think that's when we say, thank God the government might not keep the best records, because that's a very easy way, right? To just,
Absolutely.
hey, you put a new, we updated our HVAC, oh, you put a $10,000, $15,000 HVAC system on. Great. We know that increases the value of your home because now your home has an updated, HVAC unit.
Like you said, I mean, most of the town procedures are paper-based.
Yeah.
I mean, there are towns I go to, so as we have talked about before, so I am also general contractor, builder, and all that. So most of the towns that I go into, when I go and pull records in order to get permits filed, because we look for any past open permits that we're going to have to clear, I swear to you, there are some towns, and I won't name the towns, there are some towns who literally walk up to me and, they have a piece of paper, and they got this little piece of paper, and they go through and they go, and it's a card. It's an index library card, okay? And they go through and they go, hang on, George. So are you closing out permit 1242-6? I don't know. Which one is that? Well, that's a plumbing permit that was pulled in 2006. It's never been cleared.
Yikes.
Okay, so I'm going to clear a permit that's, 15 years, whatever years old. All right, okay. And they put the piece of paper back on the file. They collect my fee, okay? They charge me. I go through, I pay it. They staple it. Trust me, they're town. I watched them do this process. And sometimes I had to go back into the back clerk area because we're going through building docs and they're showing me, George, you got to account for this, this, and this. And I say, all right, fine. We're going to clear all that because we're going to do new build on this area anyhow. And guess what? It's all paper-based.
Yeah.
So to your point, a lot of towns, the improvements that are made on homes, they should be tracking it based against permit. But I'll give you two examples. The city of Meriden, they update their tax records. I think it's every 2 weeks. Danbury, I think, does it every 3 months.
Wow.
So you're down to, within different counties, you're down to also different towns, okay, and the period and frequency at which they update things. And for some of them, here's one for you. The city of Bridgeport, if you want to file and get inquiry on a permit that was put in, you have to file Freedom of Information Act. I had a listing down in Bridgeport that we had a question about something that I saw when I was doing a walkthrough on the property. And I'm looking it over and I'm going, okay, that's a question mark there. And it had to do with a potential buried oil tank. Okay. And I looked at the homeowner and I said, did you ever have an oil tank here? He goes, no, we've lived here for such and such a period of time. I said, all right. I said, so you've always had this? He's like, yeah. I said, so you never had a tank? He goes, no. So that means the tank may have existed prior. I said, but where it's located, maybe it was just in the basement. So we go and look in the basement. It was in the basement. There's no space for it in that basement. So I go to the town of Bridgeport and I said, hey, listen, I need to file for a permit request. I need to see if there is something that shows that it was removed. And they said, okay, you can file Freedom of Information Act. 5 weeks later, I got a note back saying, we don't have anything on record. I'm like, yeah. I know you did.
I'm not asking for anybody's phone number. I'm asking for whether there was an oil tank here or not.
So you can't go. So again, every town is at my town, where I live. I can walk into the town hall, go up, and I'll see the building inspector, and I can get everything right then and there. So Bridgeport's the biggest city in Connecticut, so they can't have 100 people walking in every day asking for the same thing. So they do it that way. But the point is, every town is different. Every town has either paper or systems based. You could find that your adjustment for your taxes could take, I don't know, a year, 2, or it could be instantaneous.
Yeah. And we laugh at it and I laugh at it, but it really is. I mean, this is kind of like the whole push to digitize medical records. There's so much information in a town hall. If a town hall burned down,
oh my God. Well, they have everything archived off.
Yes, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that gets lost if something like that happens.
Some towns, again, because I work with different towns, some towns have to go into their archives. Their archives are literally the basement where all the mechanicals are, where the fire may start. It depends upon the size of the town. It depends upon how the records are stored.
It should be very easy, and all these. I check every time somebody says, hey, I'm looking at the XYZ property. I go to mytaxbill.org and find the town. So a lot of this information is online and it is accessible. But it is funny sometimes how difficult it is to get, sometimes deeds are a pain in the butt to find the title, that type of thing.
Well, that's why you get title search done by attorneys, though.
Exactly.
So, I mean, look, we can joke about a few things, but at the end of the day, what everybody needs to be thinking about and be aware of is that there was a major adjustment done this year by the majority of towns in Connecticut. So if you bought a home this year or you bought a home last year, don't be surprised if your 2024 tax bill has it could be a small increase, could be a significant increase.
Yeah, it could be a couple $100. It could be a couple thousand. If what a lot of people did, I think, at the start of all of this was they were trying to figure out if they wanted to move or not. Some people said no, did work on their house, and then property values are still going up, and they said, "Oh, well, now I'm going to sell anyways." Then, so now you bought a house that was already in an appreciated market, and it just had work done to it. So your house might adjust a little bit more on that, but it's just something to be aware of. You always have to allow for that little slush in your payment, because if you're basing your whole budget off of my payment is always going to be $22, $39, and 68 cents.
So I have this other listing that I work with, and I did not represent the buyer. I was representing the seller. Okay. Buyer comes through, buyer's well qualified, no issues. All right, so we're all good. Well, we get down to closing, and the buyer, apparently, what you just said, had a fixed number that they planned. So the buyer's agent contacts me and says, "Hey, we're going to need to put in a little delay on closing." This was a little while back. This wasn't very recent. And I said, "Why? What's up?" Because we were sailing through, no issues. Like, we were flying. We were like 2 weeks ahead of everything. And I said, "Well, what's the issue?" They're having a little bit of a freak session. I said, "About what?" Well, they went through and looked at what the mortgage is going to be. I said, Well, at the end of the day, they started asking the questions of some of what we're talking about, because they were buying a house that had been flipped. Okay. It had all the improvements to it, and they were looking at the past records, and their taxes were based upon past records. And then they were seeing that. So the house was sold for $141,000 and change. Okay. And they were buying it for what did we sell for? $315.
Oh, okay. Boy.
So sizable improvements were made on the property, blah, 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 blah. They were going off of taxes because they went and did their research. They looked on, something, what did you call mytax.org or something?
Mytaxbill.org is usually what I find the towns on.
So maybe they use something like that. Their taxes were going up like $2,000.
Yeah.
And that's not an insignificant difference. That's over $100 a month.
Yeah.
And if you're coming in FHA, let's say you've got a donor, let's say you've got co-borrowers. So you're a buyer that needs assistance, which is fine. But if you're a buyer that needs assistance and you're going into this with this is going to be tight, you're going to be, in that fearful state of being house poor for that first period of time. And most of us, when we buy a house, you're settling in, you've got your expenses all over the place. But if you're trying to do that fixed amount, like you said, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, it's tough to hit. It's tough to hit that and make it stay, And listen, if you go through and look at a property's records, there are times when taxes do come down. Actually, you'll see something that goes from 4,500, 3,800, 4,200, 4,700, and you kind of go, well, what happened there? And that was maybe an adjustment to mill rate, maybe an adjustment to the assessment for some reason. So
usually the assessment.
Yes.
Usually they assume
go up and down.
I mean, usually assessments will come down if the town looks at it and says there's been no improvements because no recorded permits. There's been no improvements on the property. It's been the same that it is for the last 30 years. It has less functional value than it did 30 years ago. It's not worth as much as it was 30 years ago. The land has value, but the structural value has gone down. So they will make a negative adjustment on it. Then all of a sudden you're looking and go, so the assessment was going like this, like this, like this, and then it started going down like this, and then it skyrockets up. Well, that's obviously an indication that somebody did improvements.
Yep.
And the town, again, will make adjustments when they know those improvements have been made, especially if you require, like we did on ours, if you require full certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, because we saw our tax bill skyrocket the next year.
So stick to the small renovations is what you're saying, George.
Listen, I always encourage people to make improvements on their house because that's what creates forced appreciation on the home.
Yeah.
Okay. If you go through and the house was filled with carpet and roll out linoleum, okay, and you decide to replace everything with hardwood floors, you have increased the value of the home 100%. Okay. But if that's not known anywhere, then your taxes won't change. Your assessment may go down. But when you go to sell it, then you're going to have this big gap. And everybody's trying to say, well, based upon what? Well, if you've done more than just changed out flooring, you dropped a wall, you changed out the kitchen, you put in you converted from a full bath to a full and a half, whatever. You're going to need to take account for that. Yeah. A lot of people don't like to file those permits because they think that it means that they're going to be paying more in taxes. And fundamentally, yes, you are. But that's also what supports the value of the home when you go to sell it. Because if you try to sell a house when you didn't declare any of that stuff, then people look around and go, what do you mean it's worth $200,000 more?
Well, and it's funny you say that too. I don't want to get, into it because we're talking about taxes, but I've had, appraisal issues where we're looking at a property that was bought in January, let's say for $100,000, and it's on the market for $200,000, 3 or 4 months later. And I'll talk to my underwriter beforehand and say like, hey, is this an issue? And he'll look at the pictures and he'll go, yeah, man, I don't know where they put $100,000 into this property. Yep. Just because somebody on a whim decides something is more expensive, you can still have an issue with underwriting.
Absolutely. Well, we have somebody that we're working with. They're looking at a property, and there's the sale history of that property is very questionable. We both looked at it because we're kind of saying, yeah, it's a fit for what they want to do. It's a fit for where they want to be. It fits within what they want for mortgage. It fits for what they want with taxes.
But
the price is based upon, there's this price here. So what was it? We won't use the actual address. So the price was like here.
Yeah.
And it went down to here. And now they're trying to sell it for here.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. And there are always explanations, and as long as during the mortgage process, as long as you can explain things, we really are not trying to bust anyone up. We're trying to dot our I's and cross our T's, but you have to have an explanation.
We have a property that you and I are both working on, and it's interesting because the sale history on that house, again, this comes down to taxes. Okay. So the sale history on that house is going to show a sale at a certain date and time at a dollar value, but it was a distressed property. The taxes at that time, though, were here comparative to the sale price. Well, all the improvements were made on that property, so now it's being sold at a higher basis. But the taxes were based upon what was the appraised value of the town and the assessed value of the town, which was higher than the sold price at the time. So the taxes actually for 2024 may come down for a short period and then go right
back up. Yeah. Real estate's interesting, man.
Well, I'll tell you what, anybody who we work with or that you work with or I work with independently of each other, the point, and we talk about this, but the point is to always be more informed.
Yeah. If anyone is even watching 28 minutes of us talking about taxes, rarely are people buying property enough. Investors should probably take note of all this and pay attention to all this. But if you're your typical homeowner, if all you get out of this is, oh, I should care about taxes and ask about taxes,
research it.
Perfect.
Go to your town, talk to the town assessor, find out what's going to be my mill rate for this coming year. What's my grand list amount going to come up to be? Or what is my amount going to be on the grand list? What are my taxes going to be? No, go to your town hall and ask them specifically. Go to them. That's why they're there. You have a tax clerk in town. They are responsible for telling you what you're going to pay in taxes and why. That's what they're responsible for. You mentioned investors, and we'll let it go. But you know how many investors are about to get? So you have investors that are running with razor thin margins. Okay. So I have somebody that, not coaching, but she spends a lot of time talking to me about investments, and we were on the phone yesterday. She says, okay, we bought it for 2.25. I'm like, okay, sounds a little high. And I said, but what'd you actually do? So she says, well, we went through this, we put this percent down. So our loan is based on 170. I said, okay, but you bought it for 2.25. I don't care what your loan is. You bought it for 2.25. So you've got that sunk cost. And I said, did you put more than 50,000 into it? She goes, oh yeah, easy. Put about 65. I said, all right, so you're over 275 in value. She says, yes. I said, what are you getting for rent? She's like, now we're getting 18. I said, I said, wait, that doesn't work at all.
On a single family?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So The taxes, though, on that property, because of the purchase price and the improvements they made and what they had to clear, the taxes are about to bounce up. And I told her the other day, I said, you've got to go talk to the town hall and find out what your tax bill is going to be, because you may be at the point where you thought this was going to be a rental property you would hold. You may now need to sell that property. She goes, well, it's worth this much more. I said, then sell the damn thing.
Yeah.
But again, even as investors, you have to be paying attention. If you're going to buy, hold, your taxes are going up. If your rent clearance isn't there, okay, you're not handing the tax bill over to your tenants. It's incorporated into whatever borrowed money you have on that. If you haven't incorporated that, you're going to find that you're upside down. I have one unit, for example, that we know we're now at break even on because of the tax adjustment. Thankfully, it's a multi-unit building, so the other units make up for it. But
you reminded me. My truck that I have, my tax bill went up a good amount this year, and I called the town to figure out, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well, trucks and used cars we think went up in value, so somehow your tax bill is now higher because we believe that your truck, now a year older, is worth more than it was a year
even though
prior."
a vehicle is it is the fastest depreciating liability we all have.
Yep.
Somehow or other, the town thinks it's worth more because they can't manufacture them fast enough. They can't get the chips fast enough. They can't get parts for assembly fast enough. So yeah, it's worth more now. I know. I give up. I'm going to go swing a hammer today.
Good luck.
Yeah. I got to build a cabinet. Anyway. So, all right.
I'm hoping to go get some lumber so I've got this piece of the, not linoleum. What are the countertops you get from Home Depot?
Oh, the laminate crap.
Yeah, the laminate. And I got to make a folding table down in the laundry room. Projects, man.
Yeah, I got to go build a bar. I'll take my project over your project, because mine has a goal at the end of the day, which is I've completed the bar.
Got to have this done by 5.
I'm going to build this bar, get all this. I mean, I won't have it done today. I just got to get everything cut up and set up. A lot of screwing and gluing.
Oh yeah. Measure twice, cut once.
Well, listen, if anybody who does fall on this, or the point is simply this: at the end of the day, if you live in Connecticut, or if you live anywhere for that matter, but if you bought a house in the last 3 years and you have not seen an adjustment on your tax bill, be prepared for an adjustment. Go to the town hall, go to your town tax clerk office, ask them,
and take terrible pictures of your home when you bring pictures.
So in other words, be a realtor and use your iPhone and take photos. I can say that because I'm a broker, so I can say that. Although I never do that. I always use a photographer.
Yeah.
iPhone photos are such a bad idea. But we'll do that next time. I'll show you some terrible.
All right.
I'll show you some terrible listing photos, and I don't mean content-wise. I mean just like you look and go, what are people doing?
I'll tell you though, I've seen some where someone I know, they paid someone to come take some photos, and they were just not good photos. You have to know where does your camera go? Do you go up high in the room or go down low? Lighting, what angle?
Yep, it's all lighting.
It's always an art to everything, right?
It's all too true. All right, my friend. Well, listen, I'll catch up with you. I'm going to go swing a hammer, like I said. So you have fun building what are you building? A shelf?
I have to build a frame to put this tabletop on so that I have a place to store some laundry stuff and fold laundry.
All I have now is a picture of you standing there wearing an apron folding laundry.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I'll catch you later.
All right.